Welcome to Kicking It Local, the podcast all about the football community in South Australia. I'm your host, Johnny Keko, and today I'm joined by the coach of Salisbury United in State League 2, Matt Gaston. Mate, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. I appreciate it.
It's going to be a good chat today because you've had a big career in South Australia. 96 goals, I believe it is, in 250 games locally.
Right.
So that's your playing career, but you've been coaching for almost 11 years now, and you're only young, mid-30s, I believe.
35, 36 next month.
So 11 years coaching at that age, that's a long time.
It is. Look, it's something I was always passionate about doing. I loved the other side of the game, I guess. I wasn't just about playing. So for me, getting into it at youth level and trying to build that knowledge so that once I did retire, I could step straight in at senior level was always my ambition.
Well, now you're at least going to, well, fingers crossed all goes well, you're going to be there for another 3 years because you just signed a brand new contract. Congratulations with you for the 3-year contract, the Salisbury.
Yeah, look, fantastic. I think it was great that they gave me a 2-year to start with. It probably took that initial pressure off, and then to have chats with them and get the feedback that they're really happy with how I'm going, and to get that long extension, I suppose it's a commitment to me from them, which, a lot of young coaches don't necessarily get. So, yeah, really appreciative of that.
And I'll talk about how you got there afterwards because you had to make a little bit of a sacrifice to take this job off. It was a little bit of a risk when you were at Adelaide Uni. But before we get there, let's go into your playing career because you've scored 96 goals, over 250 games locally, but you could have, after chatting to you could have done a lot more if you had stayed here in Adelaide, but because you did leave for a little period to take a completely different turn away from your football career, but it all kicked off for you, Playford. So what was the choice for going to Playford?
I was a junior at Elizabeth City, and then we transitioned to Playford. So that was 2000. So I went and joined the Sports Institute on a scholarship, and from there came out of that and returned to Playford. Was lucky enough to break into the first team there at sort of 16 and had a strong season individually, but as a team, we got relegated. So not necessarily a great position for the club to be in, but for me, it was fantastic exposure at such a young age. So always wanted to be at Playford. And
you're a northern boy?
Yeah, grew up in the heart of Elizabeth. So, good or bad. But grew up there, played there for a majority of my junior career through the Downs and stuff like that. So,
is that why you've eventually found your way back there now with Salisbury United?
Yeah, I think I've always associated that region. My parents still live there. I work north. So I think for me, it's just somewhere I feel quite natural with. And I think there's a different vibe about northern clubs. And I think you have to have sort of grown up with them to truly understand and appreciate them. So for me, I've always had that association and wanted to return there.
Well, then you played there for a little bit. You kept on returning back. You found your way back to Playford throughout your career, but your next step after that was Metro Stars. And that's turned to be a successful one for you because you just got relegated with Playford. Then you go there and you win back-to-back titles in the NPL with Metro Stars. What was it like to be part of the Metro Stars in that 2003 period?
2003, 2004 period. Yeah, look, it was really good, to be honest. I knew the coaches, Mark Barnett and Brenton Hearn, from the state environments that I've been involved in, and they gave me a call and got me out there. And look, I was just a kid, but there was phenomenal footballers out there from top to bottom. I was sitting on the bench alongside people like Shane Smeltz, you know what I mean? So it was, there was weeks where like Michael Brooks and Corey Artoni are on the bench, and I'm just sitting there like, just incredible.
How old were you at that time?
17 and 18.
17?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So young. So I was there. I think that was Delosio's first year out there as well. I think Matrish had just returned back to Campbelltown. So it was Yongi was his first year out there as well. So there's a lot of young lads out there. And then they had this core group of established 14, 15-year-olds who were probably at that stage all Adelaide United level, to be honest. And it was a great learning experience. Well,
so that was one of your favourite moments being there like at that period? 17-year-old, that would have shaped your career being around those big players at the time.
Yeah, I think when you're there, you want to play more. Like I was still playing enough, but probably a few appearances off the bench. But I think when you look back at it in hindsight and you realise, I suppose, the habits you learned off such high caliber, high quality footballers, it's a lot of things I've established and taken through my entire career. So
someone like Shane Smeltz, what was that like to be alongside him?
Yeah, look, he was young at the time too. I mean, he was struggling to break into the team. You got someone like Michael Brooks up front and Vince Gamizzi, and it was just incredible. Like to be able to week in, week out training was like nothing I'd ever had. And I'd gone from a team like Playford, who had been relegated, where a lot of the stars were on their way out, to a club at Metro who had significant ambition at that period of time. So yeah, it was incredible to be a part of. What's
your favourite moments? I know you won those titles and also a cup during that period, but is there any moments and memories that stick out for you during that period?
Look, there's a couple. I think I tell two stories. So one, probably not football related. It's pre-season, we were doing the uni loops. And Corey Artoni's rocked up and doesn't do uni loops, and he's jumped in his car for half the uni loop, and that was probably something I'd never seen and probably never see again. And then the second one, from a footballing perspective, was just, I think, it's a weird thing to say, but just training. I'd never been in training environment like that, and just the quality of footballers. And sometimes you would train and we were losing players consistently to A-League and stuff like that at that period of time. But all of a sudden I'd look around and every single player had played 300 games. You'd just be joining in at training. Whenever you'd done something good and they acknowledged it, it was just like it meant something because they'd been there, they'd done it.
What were some of the training things that you noticed that was different to what you experienced before at Playford?
Just consistency of execution. So, you could do a passing exercise and even just something small like a rondo. And if you're in the middle for a long time. Because just people don't make mistakes at that level. You do a shooting exercise and you got someone like Dan Godley in goal, who's a high caliber keeper, and ball's just being buried in the net, left, right and centre, because, someone like Brooksy goes 10 from 10. So it's just, incredible standards.
So now you're on your up. You got to be around these players and stuff. Did you have any hints of that you might get more game time at Metro Stars and potentially become like a regular first team player?
It was always my ambition, and it was always something I felt I was going to get there. I was probably a little bit unlucky with my body at that period of time. It broke down a little bit, and that put a significant sort of hold on any sort of next step, really. Look, I think if I was able to stay fit during that period, I probably would have been able to establish myself more, but body just let me down a little bit.
Then after that, you made a change. Instead of going to another club, you left football altogether to join a defence force at the age of 18. What was the reason behind that?
Yeah, look, as I said, I was trialling out for a team at the time called Team SA, which was competing in an international challenge. And my groins just broke down. I could barely move, and I got diagnosed with osteitis pubis at that time. Oh, shit. And really bad. And sort of the doctor said to me sort of 6 to 12 months off, no football. And I had 6 months off. I came back and I still felt it. And I think I was sitting at home, I'd put on a bit of weight. And my old man goes, "You get a job." And then I sort of looked online at what sort of jobs were available. And I'd always been reasonably patriotic. My grandparents had come out after the war. So I'd always had an interest in that side of things. So I thought to myself, you know what? Free medical. Get myself into the Defence Force. They can maybe fix my body and then see how I go from there. So packed up my bags and off I went.
What was the reception like from your family when you told them that's what you wanted to do? When your dad said get a job, he probably thought maybe at the deli down the road, not going to the Defence Force.
Yeah, look, I think it was a bit of a shock for them. They've always been supportive of anything I've ever done in my life, but I think it was a big shock for them. Especially 18. Probably not expecting me to do that, to be honest.
Just I want to take a step back to the osteitis pubis diagnosis you got. So what was that like? How did that affect you, if you don't mind me asking? How did that affect you with the your life as well? Especially you couldn't play football anymore, but did it make a big change to the way you had to live as well?
Yeah, look, it happened at a time where that wasn't a common diagnosis. So for probably a good 3-4 months, I was being diagnosed with groin strains, having 2 weeks off, coming back, breaking down again. And it got to a point where I couldn't get out of bed. Like physically didn't have the strength through my core to get out of bed. So it affected normal day things like just walking. So for me, it significantly impacted, I suppose, physical, but then mental as well, because I love the game and I've played football every day of my life from probably the age of 4. So there was all of a sudden, there was this period where it was the first setback I'd have experienced from an injury perspective and not being able to play. And I was struggling to even go to games on Saturdays and watch because I just wasn't enjoying it. So it was a mental break in the end, I think, which sort of I stepped away from the game for that reason, because I was trying to hang on to the game without necessarily being involved in it.
So for those that don't know, with osteitis pubis, is it something that lasts for a long time, or just you can get over it after 12 months or something, or is it there for a lifetime?
Yeah, I think it's much more manageable now, but at the time, it's basically like, I mean, the way I described it to people was like severe shin splints in your groin.
Yeah.
Like and everything had swollen up. And look, I suppose training during those years was a lot more like road running in the off season, a lot more harder pitches and stuff like that. So it was probably a common thing, but yeah, it completely ruins my groin. And then because I had it so bad, I lost a lot of core strength.
Yep.
And so I think if you reestablish yourself with core strength, you're okay. Probably something I never done to the maximum. So I experienced it for the rest of my career.
Yeah. So then, when you went to the Defence Force, what was that like there? Did it affect you there as well? Or did that help you?
Yeah, look, I'd
fitness.
Probably had my sort of 12 months rest by then. So realistically, the body had recovered reasonably well. But there was certain things where, especially like we were out in Victoria in the cold, so get a couple of minus degrees days, and the body felt very sore.
How long did you end up doing the Defence Force for?
Yeah, so I was in there for about 3 years in the end. Three and a half years.
Yep. What was your role down there?
Sure. So it's a bit of a long one. I was a communications and information system sailor.
Oh, wow.
So just basically communicator, really.
Yeah.
On the radios, Morse code, flashing
Morse
light.
code.
Yeah, well, that's I don't remember any of it, but look, it was unique doing all the flags and stuff like that. I always wanted to get into the IT industry. I always had a passion in it, and this was something that I was going to come out of there with some qualifications with from an IT side of things. So.
Yep. So with the Morse code side, how hard is that to learn, and what is it specifically that you had to do with the Morse code?
Yeah, I suppose you have the alphabet, and it all has short pauses, long pauses, and you just do repetition. I mean, we spent probably 16 months.
So it's like different sounds and stuff?
Yeah, so like, dit is a short and dirt is a long, and then like A might be dit dirt, and then different letters have different representations, different numbers have different
representations. It's all like with buzzing sounds, is it?
Yeah, correct. So either flashing a light to create short and long, or pressing the buzzer, which creates like buzzing noises for short and long. It's
oh, wow.
It was a long time to learn.
Yeah.
And then it's not just about learning it, it's about having to be really fast at it, and then being able to read it quickly, because you could be flashing light with a ship that's 6 or 7 kilometers away in rough seas, and you're trying to flash a light with them. It's very difficult.
Yeah, because if you just miss one light or something,
changes everything. Changes everything. So yeah, no, sometimes you'd be writing stuff down and you'd be like, that doesn't make sense, and you'd have to sort of fill in the gaps. But yeah, very challenging.
I can imagine. I don't think I could do that.
And something
to talk English sometimes.
It's something that you probably never do in any other facet of life.
Yeah,
it's very unique to the Defence Force. So it's not been a skill that's translated really. But no, it was a very unique, incredible experience.
So how would you describe that experience, not just the Morse code, but everything else you did during that period of 3 years, help you for when you came out of it and afterwards in life?
Yeah, look, and I think that's probably the most positive thing, was just independence, autonomy, discipline.
Yep.
All these probably intangible things that sometimes you get through life experience. I mean, as a young kid, being 18 years of age, learning how to, I suppose, take yes, take no's. You know what I mean? You got your parents as your sole source of discipline normally when you're a young kid, and all of a sudden I had officers who I had to say yes to telling me what to do. So you certainly learn discipline and independence and things like that, and I think that's sort of put me in a position for the rest of my life where moving out of home at that age and being independent, I feel like it just helped me develop as a person. Yeah.
So how long did it take until you found your way back into football again?
Yeah, so I played a little bit when I was in basic training, just for the base, really. That was very low level country stuff in Victoria. But then once I got deployed to Cairns, I joined a team up in North Queensland in their top tier called Stratford Dolphins, and had a good season there. And that's when I knew my body was starting to feel better. That was challenging. I was having to sort of fit football into being deployed at sea and being rostered on for weekends and stuff like that. But some friends really helped me out, and I was able to play a majority of the games and had a really good season up there.
What was the quality like in Far North Queensland? Was it as high as what it could be here in South Australia?
I would say the top level talent, yes, but there probably wasn't as much depth to teams. Every team sort of had 2 or 3 really standout players. And especially at that time, they were just starting to establish like North Queensland Fury and stuff like that.
In the A-League?
In the A-League. So there's quite a lot of players that were pulled from the local league out there to sort of train with them. And so the standard was definitely increasing. And you have a lot of people who played locally in different states that are up there living now, and they go and play out there. So look, I would say it's probably a top end State League One talent sort of level.
Okay.
With a couple of sporadic NPL players thrown in per team.
Yeah,
it was good fun.
I can imagine. And then once you're there for a few years, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Come back home, or was there ever the intention to come back home after that?
Look, there was the intention to come back home, but obviously had the opportunity to go overseas. So took some time off from the Navy and travelled overseas and ended up spending around sort of 3-4 years over in the UK.
UK, nice.
Yeah.
Did you ever play in the UK? Or
I did. I played some lower level stuff in the UK, some sort of semi-pro stuff, and then also just some fun stuff with friends from work, and that really enjoyed it, to be honest.
With the semi-pro, any teams that you...
so just like Malden Town, I think they're Malden and Tiptree now, played a little bit in some Ryman League teams, really, which is probably just the tier below, like conference and stuff like that. So, a couple of FA Cup runs and stuff like that.
So you did play FA Cup?
Yeah, played an FA Cup game. We played against Ipswich Town, which I think at that time Roy Keane was managing. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Did you obviously got a start in that game? Or
I come off the bench in that game, yeah. So I was playing for... I was out at Malden and I represented like this Essex Select team, which was the county I was in at the time, and off the back of that, I was doing some pre-season out there as well, and then some really early days FA qualifying games.
What's the quality like over there with the FA Cup? Because I've spoken to Mark Talbot, he played an FA Cup game as well.
Yep.
In the lower levels. But what was it like for you to be a part of the like a historic cup competition in the football?
Yeah, look, it's an incredible experience, and I suppose at the time I probably didn't appreciate it as much as now I look back on it and think, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it when it's that low level.
Yeah,
I think if you'd got through to those first couple of rounds and you start getting into some of the bigger games, yes, but at that level, you're playing like 48 games in a season from a league perspective, so 4 or 5 different cup competitions. All of a sudden you've had 9 games in 2 weeks. You forget which game you're playing. You're like cup, league. It's incredible. But no, I really enjoyed all my time over there, and I got to establish myself as a striker while I was over there as well, which is probably the biggest thing for me. Yep.
So did you get your most experience playing over there than what you did playing in the Far North Queensland?
Yeah, I think look, most of my junior career I was a striker, and then sort of when I hit about 12, 13, I sort of transitioned back to being a defender.
Yep.
And at Playford and Metro, I was primarily a defender. And I didn't really enjoy it, but I always saw myself as more of an offensive player. And then, sort of Far North Queensland played as a striker, and then when I went overseas, I established myself as a striker even more and got lots of experience over there. Just played lots of football.
Yeah.
In 2-3 years over there, I probably played the equivalent to 8 or 9 seasons here.
Yeah.
In terms of games, so it was just fantastic experience.
So if you had established yourself as a striker in those early seasons, you probably could have cracked the over 100 goals.
Look, I think 100 goals was probably something I was a little bit disappointed not to reach, and I spent probably the last 5 or 6 years of my career playing as a holding midfielder as well. Yep. So, for me, in Australia or in South Australia, I probably only spent 3 seasons playing as a striker.
Jeez.
And sort of scored about 50, 60 goals during that period. So it was disappointing to probably not to have played them more.
Well, you can probably do a Jonathan Negus and get yourself back on as a player coach.
You're only
35.
I see Nego doing that, and I just think to myself, I'd pull up so sore on Sundays.
But so then you found your way back to Australia again to live, and that's where you found yourself back at Playford City again.
Yep.
How did you manage to come back home? Was there a bit of a homesickness involved in this decision, or just what happened there?
It coincided with my mum sort of turning around that 50 mark, and I'd been away for 2.5, 3 years with the Navy, and I'd been overseas for 3 years, and I'd probably seen my parents 3 times in that period of time physically. So for me, it was just getting to that point where it was like I was sort of hitting 24, 25 and going, it's probably that next step in life, and just trying to settle down, and so came home, and I wouldn't say homesickness. I'd probably say it was just more wanting to be around family and just setting myself up for the next phase of my life. I wanted to start coaching, and that was always something I was passionate about doing. In
between, you went back and forth between multiple teams. What was the reason behind that, and what teams were they that you jumped to and from?
Yeah, so I came back to Playford, and I had sort of 2.5 seasons at Playford, and enjoyed it. my first half a season back was very enjoyable. Obviously, we won the league, came back as a striker, and then Hugo Jimenez left, and Carl Maynard joined the club for 2 years. And Carl, wherever Carl was, I always played as a holding midfielder.
Yep.
So I think after 2 years, I sort of got to that point where I was like, I really wanted to play as a striker again. And I left. I went to Raiders for around eight or 9 games, maybe a very short period of time, and Cole joined there as well. So I sort of went back under Steve DiGiovanello, who was doing well at Playford at the time. And yeah, wherever I went, Cole sort of recruited me there, and I always liked the opportunity to play under Cole because I thought he was a really good coach. But at the same time, I probably had a difference of opinion in where I best fit into a team.
Yep.
So yeah, getting out under Steve for 2.5 years, and that's pretty much where he played me up front the whole time.
Yep.
Sort of had 2 seasons of 25 plus goals, and it was a good time.
So
for
why
me.
weren't you up front other times? Is there a reason behind it?
Look, you'd have to interview Carl. Look, I think ultimately it was just team needs.
Yep.
Is probably my assumption is that Carl really liked me in the midfield role, maybe from a distribution perspective, and maybe I wasn't his kind of striker, I'm not too sure, but still scored enough goals during those periods, but yeah, never really impacted the game as much as I thought I could from an offensive perspective, so it was nice to play up front.
Yep. So then you finally got to play up front there, but then you found your way back to Patriots again.
Yep.
Play for Patriots, and you've helped them to get to the State League 2 title as well there.
Yep.
What was it like being a part of that team that to win promotion back into the State League 1, where they obviously they thought they deserved to be?
Yeah, look, it was. I came back into a team that was doing reasonably well.
Yep.
Look, I felt I came back into a strong team, and I was sort of I was more of a contributor. I probably didn't add a lot of value. That's me being brutally honest. I was probably unfit. I was finding my legs. I hadn't played. It was the off season over in England when I came back. So I joined here halfway through a season, like just completely in a position of I wasn't even expecting to play.
Yeah.
And they sort of twisted my arm a little bit. I had a lot of friends out there, and that sort of all kicked that off. But yeah, obviously made a final with Playford later on, where we lost to Modbury under Steve, and that was probably the highlight of my career that season.
Yeah.
That was probably the most enjoyable season of football I've ever had.
You're at Playford for most of your early career and most of your senior career as well. But then you got towards the end of your playing career and you decided to move on to Modbury Jets.
Yep.
You already had a little bit of coaching experience at your time during your time at Playford with the women's and the junior setup. But at Modbury, what was your role there? Because you continued on your coaching role there as well.
Yeah, so I moved into the under-18s role at Modbury. It was probably, Jason recruited me there as a player first and foremost, but I had a passion to transition into senior football at that point from a coaching perspective. So I was fortunate enough to be offered the 18s role there as well. And that was a really good 3 years. Really enjoyed the coaching component of being involved at Modbury and built a lot of strong relationships and got to work with a lot of good players who are still a part of the Modbury first team to this day. And it's great to see them have that success that they're having.
How did that build up your coaching career starting off with the 18s there?
Yeah, I think just the transition from juniors to seniors and getting to work with players a little bit more in, an environment where we had expectations to want to win.
Yep.
And a lot of players at that stage being 15, 16, 17, they're only 1 or 2 seasons away from senior football. So you're trying to prepare them as much as possible for playing at that next level. And I think what quite often happens at that age as well is kids jump reserves a little bit. Yep. Those really top end talents, they go from 18s to first team. So trying to prepare them as much as possible for that step, very beneficial and educational for me.
And at the time, where were Modbury in the leagues? They were State League 1 back that period?
Yeah, so State League 1 during that period, they'd just been relegated from the NPL.
Yep.
So yeah, they'd obviously gone up and then come back down. So that was their first season back down. So yeah, went out there for State League 1 and good level to coach at as well.
And that was about 6-7 years ago now.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at them. They're a strong team here in 2022.
Yep.
They just they got into the cup final, and now they're just won premiership, the premiers, and promotion back into the NPL. What was it like with being with them in the year that they had been relegated from the NPL? Because obviously the motivation would have been down a little bit disappointed from that. What was it like coming in fresh and seeing that environment?
Yeah, look, I mean, the club was going through a lot of changes as a whole. The artificial had just been approved.
Yep.
So there was upgrades happening from a club perspective. And I think financially the club had always been in a really good place, but it was going through a transitional period. And certainly there was probably some more older players phasing out as younger players were phasing in. And you'd lost the likes of players like Tim Henderson and Salonia and all that sort of stuff. So look, from a club perspective, it was a great club to be involved with, really nice people, and it's fantastic to see them having the success they're having now. But it was an interesting period from a transitional period, because I think once they got that artificial and got Smith Partners on board from a naming rights perspective, that's when they really kicked off.
Yep. Now look at it, an unstoppable team. They've got some great players that they've recruited back, and the club itself seems very strong as well at Modbury.
Yeah, look, I mean, adding the two McKay brothers, fantastic additions. But I think probably what's been the strongest thing is the fact that they've had consistency over the last sort of 3-4 years now as well. You look at players like Dan Detroyer and Michael Doyle at the back; they've been there for a while, and Jesse's been there a while, and even some of the younger players. They've got a really good blend of experience and youth.
Yeah.
And it's great to see. Even some of the boys I used to coach back in the 18s, like young Harrison Conant, like seeing him sort of getting to play on the big stage. It's really enjoyable. I think any coach always takes enjoyment out of seeing their players have that opportunity at first team level.
Yeah, they got some good ones, especially like Lippert, Robbie Lippert, and then you got Mullen as well there.
Yep.
And then also Cooper Wegner, 7-second goal. Can't go past that.
Yeah, that's it. It's fantastic.
But it's good for them, and it's a northern club as well. So obviously it's in your veins to be a part of that northern club. But then you made your way back into the hills.
Yes.
Where you joined Sturt Lions. You're the State League 1 reserves coach at that time. Only a year there.
Yep.
What was it like? Was it just purely coaching, or any playing in the background as well?
No, look, I'd moved south, and I'd had a baby.
Yep.
And I was probably not in a position to play and coach.
Yep.
And I made the decision just to coach. So took on the reserve role at Sturt. Still had the itch. I was still young. I think I was 32 at the time. But purely a coaching role. And look, really enjoyed it. It was a good opportunity to get out there. Sturt were at that club, at that time, a club that had really been building. And I really enjoyed what Sturt was about. And no home base at that point. We're playing out of the shores. But look, from a club perspective and from a people perspective, a fantastic club to be involved in. Yeah.
And for those that don't know, obviously they'll rebuilding Carina Reserve, which has just opened up now, brand new facilities, and probably one. I don't know if you've been out there yet, but I've heard the pitch is one of the best in South Australia now.
Yeah, look, I've only watched. I've been out there a couple of times to catch up on some games and catch up with some people, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
it's such a picturesque backdrop, and
it is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and it's been well built. It's a proper footballing facility.
And the view there, I hate winter, but the view in winter sometimes in the Adelaide Hills is beautiful. Because we were sitting in the club rooms afterwards, after a game. I was commentating, we're there watching, and then the sun comes down behind the trees. The trees are all black, the sky is red. Yep. It was beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's like, and we used to, obviously, daylight savings, when you'd train there, and all of a sudden it hits sort of that 8 o'clock at night and everything's sunsetting, and like you look at your right and you see the whole city and all of Adelaide and stuff like that. It's a fantastic experience.
It is beautiful. But then you made yourself central afterwards. You went back to Adelaide Uni at that period. You joined Raf Frazina, who obviously I've interviewed on here in the past, and he spoke about that period because that's his second year full-time coaching. He brought a lot of people in to try and bring some change to the club. You're one of those. Also, Mark Talbot was one of those who I've spoken to as well about this. What was it like for you to come into this club that was in a massive rebuilding stage from an amateur mentality kind of team set up to try and go into more of that professional, semi-professional feel? What was it like for you to come into that? Did you fit in nicely?
Yeah, look, for me, I mean, I had a personal relationship with Raf, and I'd probably expressed to him my desire to get involved with the first team. And he had Macron at that stage as well still, and it was really kicking off. So I think it worked well for both of us in a sense that I was able to come and help him and give him probably somebody that he trusted. And look, the playing group at that stage, he was happy from the previous year. I think a lot had happened at the end of the last season, and he was able to sort of establish the players he wanted to keep, and were able to make some really strong additions. And it was a really enjoyable time to be involved with the club, and obviously making finals with them as well was an exceptional achievement for him, and he won Coach of the Year that year as well. So, no, look, it was a great experience to be involved in a first team. and just gave me that sort of foot in the door to what it was like. And
yeah, well, you also so that was your first experience in first team. You're assistant coach, but then during that season, you got your first opportunity, which was a massive call to make, to join Salisbury United as the your first ever senior coaching role, head coaching role. How did that opportunity come to you, and what was it like when you finally got offered that role?
Yeah, look, it was about 6 rounds to go in the season, and I got a phone call from a representative of Salisbury, and they just sort of asked if I'd be interested in having an interview. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to have an interview, and then sort of got offered the gig the next week. There was 5 rounds to go, and you know, I'd probably at that stage had a desire to want to see the season out with uni. You invest so much, and we were on a tipping edge at that point where finals was a possibility. But Salisbury were really keen to get me on board as well, and just to have an assessment of the squad and where they were at. So very fortunate that RAF and Uni were able to let me go. I was probably very lucky at that point that a lot of our games weren't conflicting either, so I was able to still get to Uni games and support the boys. So
there was no match up between Uni and
there was
United?
There was
one?
Yeah, my third game, I think it was my third or second game, we had Uni, and it was a very surreal experience because I was probably of the preference that I didn't really want to coach it. Yeah, because obviously, you know, you work with the group so closely, you have an understanding of what they're about, and I'd really provided minimal information to the group. But my first game, we had started really strong and had a win over Gawler. And I think, we sort of played Uni, and we had a really strong win in that game, and I felt horrible because at that stage, Uni, like, we were down the bottom, and Uni were pushing for finals, and it's probably a result they expected to get. And I felt so bad afterwards. But yeah, no, it was interesting. Very mixed emotions.
Did you use any of the insights you had to Uni against them or not?
No, I didn't. Like I knew at that stage Uni had shifted to 3 at the back, and I didn't even put anything on the board before the game. I was just like it was just more like I was more in an assessment period where if I'm being honest, I probably wanted Uni to win the game because I wanted them to obviously go on and make finals, but. Yeah, they made a couple of mistakes and we punished them with goals. And then once the boys start getting involved in the game, it kicked on. But yeah, it was a very surreal experience.
Did the club know or did they ever get brought up about what the way you're going to react in that game? Because obviously you had a close attachment to Uni. Did that get brought up?
Yeah, look, I'd spoke to him during the week and sort of said, like, you know, my preference was probably to not really engage in that game. It's probably a discussion I'd had with RAF as well. Because I didn't want to, but I think them from a club, and I didn't have an assistant at that time. Obviously, I was brand new and I didn't bring an assistant in, so there was really no one who could step in for me. So I spent most of the game just sitting on the bench, not saying anything, because I was just watching and writing, but didn't really want to coach or fix anything. And I was just like, oh no, we're winning here. I don't know what to do. It was a unique experience.
What was RAF like? Did he obviously would understand, but
I think it was a bit salty though. I think because I was expecting to win, and I was probably I didn't celebrate. I definitely didn't celebrate, but yeah, it was a weird one because I think both of us probably expected that Uni were going to win that game, and it was just they had an off day and we had a good day, and I happened to be in the other coaching box, so it was a weird one.
Now, that's so now you were there for that was a 2020 season. 2021. You had another okay season there, and now you've got your contract extension. Now you signed a 2-year contract. At the end of it, in this year 2022, you signed your 3-year contract until 2025. What's it mean to you to be a part of this team and actually have that support from a club to give you an extra 3 years extension? Yeah,
look, I mean, when I took over the club, they'd won like 10 games of football in 3 seasons. So I came into a club probably at a really low end. No expectation, just very much wanting to sort of re-establish everything, and I think we've done that over the last couple of seasons. We've rebuilt, I suppose, the quality on the football pitch, but really put in place some of the stuff off the pitch as well. And obviously, we're back at Burton now, which is a big thing for the club. So for me, I felt these first 2 seasons were very much sort of foundation years and re-establishing ourselves. And now with the 3-year extension, I suppose the benefit for me is hopefully taking the club to the next step now. Their confidence in me that I'm the right person to take them forward. And obviously from a coaching perspective, it gives me job security a little bit as well. So
next step for you, obviously, is that promotion to State League One? Is that what you guys are aiming for? Is that the whole reason they brought you to this club, is to get promotion?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd like to think that's one of the reasons they brought me in. I think I fit their mold.
Yep.
They were a club trying to re-establish themselves, and I was a young coach trying to establish myself. So I think we fit each other's timeline, and we make no secret of the fact that our ambition is to get promoted back to State League One. I think that's where the club sees itself. They're the only northern club that's ever won the top league.
Yep.
So Salisbury was a very, very big club back in the day, and there's a lot of people involved who still remember those days quite fondly and want to get back there. So we know it's no quick fix, and we know it's one step at a time, but we would like to think over the next couple of seasons we're putting ourselves in a position to get back to that level.
Well, this is your third season at the club. You were very close to getting into a position of promotion, where it was a very likely chance in top two. So you kind of put that focus on that for another important game, which is I'm going to highlight for you because I know you don't want to talk about it, but I need to talk about it. This year's Federation Cup in South Australia was a big one for State League teams because for the first time ever we had 3 State League teams in the semi-finals. Obviously, Modbury Jets, who ended up getting into the grand final, the final against Adelaide City, and then also the Eastern United in State League 1, and another State League 2 team, one of your opponents, Vipers FC. But if you go one step back to that, was the quarterfinals. There was only 2 NPL teams in that whole thing, Campbelltown and Adelaide City. Adelaide City were the team that you played in the quarterfinals, and you could have knocked them out. The potential champion, they ended up being the champions. So you can kind of use that against it. Say, they were champions. We got knocked out by the champions. But you got knocked out by them. They got smashed by them in the end. But it was a point in that game where you managed to level it out to 1-1. And everyone thought, here we go, another cup set is on the cards here. But you made a massive choice to change the game. Can you please talk about that choice you made where you took off a lot of key players to focus on the league in the next league game on the weekend?
Yeah, look, it was probably at that halfway point of the year for us where midweek games weren't ideal. We don't have a deep squad, and we'd had a big game on the weekend against Modbury Vista, which we'd got up 4-2. First, third were playing each other on the Saturday, and we had a game against Seaford on the Saturday, and we'd sort of spoke on the Monday about what our goal, our ambition was, and obviously we wanted to go to Adelaide City and make a good account of ourselves, but I'd had a pretty deep discussion with the group about making significant changes around the 60th minute mark and taking off 3 or 4 players who had basically played every game for us, who were key players. And we hit the 60th minute and we're at 1-1, and I sort of looked at a few of them and they asked to stay on, and then we got to the 75th minute and it was still 1-1. And I probably made the decision to take 2 or 3 boys off who were playing well at the time as well. And yeah, look, I mean, you put a couple of young lads onto the pitch who were great, fantastic experience for them, and they're Salisbury lads, and to play against that calibre of players definitely going to benefit them. But obviously the levelling quality shown out after that, and obviously Adelaide City go and score 3 goals in about 5 minutes, and I
think it was Kirker scored a couple.
Kirker scored, and then Bucco got one, and yeah, it blew out pretty quickly, and it was pretty deflating. If I'm being honest with you, like probably not a reflection of how I thought the game went. Yeah, and yeah, it wasn't a great result.
It didn't end up being, but would you? Knowing the position you were in, you want, obviously the league is where you want to get to, because if you go up to State League 1 next year, obviously that's huge for the club. Yeah. But would you change that decision that you made on that game day now, knowing what you've done, what's happened, the way things have gone?
I think as a player, I would have never have wanted that decision to have been made, because once you're in a game, you want to go for it.
Yeah.
I think the coaching side of me came in where, before the season, everything about our goals and ambitions as a group was to get promoted.
Yep.
And every decision we had made was about that and achieving that target. So as strange as it might seem, we look at it from a squad perspective, and at that level where we lack that depth that, say, Adelaide City are bringing Nick Bucco off the bench. We're not necessarily in that position. So, they made changes as well, just a different caliber of player, but I wouldn't change it, no.
No, we could have at that point put yourself back on. Yeah, Matt Gaston coming back on.
Yeah, no, I would have got. Probably would have been more. We would have conceded more.
But now looking back, that would have been a huge thing. Would have been 4 from 4 state league teams. The first time ever having 2 non-state NPL teams in the Australia Cup. But doesn't matter because Adelaide City went on to win that. So I think it was inevitable. It was you were very lucky to get that equaliser in that game. But what was that experience like for the boys to play against Adelaide City, a team that's probably one of the benchmarks in the NPL at the moment? But to get that experience during their really good run at that stage, they've kind of dropped off now. But what was it like for the boys to get that experience as well against them?
Yeah, look, we prepared well for them, I thought. It was probably the first time we were going to play against a team who we felt would dominate the ball.
Yep.
So we set up to sort of, I suppose, counter them. And we went in having the goal to be in the game at halftime. I think whenever you're a lower level team and you're playing a high level team, you want to make sure you don't get blown out early. And we got in at halftime 1-0 down and probably conceded from a corner, which is the one area I didn't think we would concede from. But we came out after half time and really stabilised the game. And they still had the ball, but they weren't as threatening. They were still threatening in the first half, but they weren't as threatening in the second half. And then when we got the goal, it was a very even game there for a good 5-10 minutes. And yeah, I think if we had grabbed a second during that period, it would have made things very interesting. I don't think those changes would have happened then. But once it stayed at 1-1 and we got to that 75th minute, I felt it was okay to make the changes. But
15 minutes, so do you reckon that could have been all right for the boys to play that extra 15? Or?
Oh, look, I do.
Yeah,
I do. I suppose there was concern as well. 2 of our previous cup games had gone to extra time as well. So we're getting to that point where, some boys had played some significant minutes in the season. We don't necessarily have a lot of depth, so there's not a lot of player rotation that happens at our level. So some boys have sort of they're 12 games deep, 15 games deep with the cup games on top, and there was some sore bodies, and we'd already started noticing in the 2 or 3 weeks prior some players were starting to manage themselves through training. And I thought, if this does roll into the 90th minute and all of a sudden it gets to that 100 plus mark, then it could be a challenge. And look, it is what it is, but yeah, I probably wasn't the most popular person at the club there for a little while.
I can imagine. Was it hard to go back to the club and face them afterwards, or they understand, or did it take a while?
Oh, look, we'd made it really clear it's what we were going to do, and there was an agreement from the group that it's what we were going to do going into the game. But I think they made that agreement probably not realising that they might be in the game at that point. So once they're in the game at that point, there's probably that agreement isn't there anymore. But look, it was pretty sombre on Thursday. I think it was just more disappointment. But
just being so close. But it doesn't matter now. You made that decision now. I remember Twitter. I remember looking at the Twitter comments and people saying, "Why would you do that?" And I remember you chiming in and giving your opinion, saying, "Well, we'll see if it counts on the end of the season, but if that was the right decision." But you're getting towards finals now, which is good. But talking about your heart was always in the north. You're coaching now. You played in the north. You're coaching now in the north, but you live in Happy Valley. So it's like over a 55-minute drive from your house to the to your training and where you play as well. What is it like to do that travel all the time?
Yeah, look, it's a challenge. I think you speak to any sort of senior coaches at this level, and there's not a lot of jobs going. So once the opportunity came about, travel was never going to be something that stopped me from doing something. So, look, I'm really lucky, very supported at home, and I have the opportunity to do it without too much fuss. So for me, sometimes it's nice. I've got 2 young boys, so sometimes having a drive for an hour by myself and getting to have some alone time isn't the worst thing in the world. But look, it's challenging. Weeknights I get home at 10:30 at night, so. Eating dinner at 10:30 by myself in a dark house. But yeah, look, it's something I would do every day of the week. I love football so much, and Salisbury's a fantastic club. I'd travel further if I had to.
Yep. So what's it like being with Salisbury? What's it like being at that club? Because obviously they're a State League 2 team now, but they used to be a very strong team. Obviously got a strong community. What's it like being there as well?
Yeah, look, I think the people off the pitch are fantastic. I think sometimes you don't necessarily appreciate it until you're in the inner sanctum and you see how hard, every club has them, people who work behind the scenes and are devoted volunteers, and there's fantastic people at the club and lots of old people, heavily involved. I think The club lost a little bit when it moved from the old Steve Jarvis Park. It lost that little bit of connection. But now that we're back at Burton and obviously Steve Jarvis Park, the new one, it's starting to build it again now. We're starting to get more and more people out week in, week out. And those people are starting to get reconnected to the club as well. So we're going through that transitional phase at the moment. But yeah, look, they're absolutely fantastic people there. And I forever feel supported. Yeah. And every club has them, but sometimes I think when you're in a club, you feel like yours are the best, and I certainly feel like mine are.
Yeah, well, it seems like a good fit for you now. You're in the north. It's an hour drive, but at least you can reflect on the game plan and think, maybe I shouldn't have taken the players off for 75 minutes in the cup.
Definitely. That's a long drive down the expressway, dwelling on things.
It would have been that night as well, I'd assume.
Yeah, it was.
But it doesn't matter. The season for you guys, hopefully it goes well, but it doesn't matter what happens right now because the future could... you're only been there for 2 years, so in 3 years' time you may make it to the semi-finals. Who knows?
Yeah, that's it. Look, I mean, I think it's always the ambition to have a good cup run.
Yeah,
everyone wants a good cup run.
Yeah. This one was surprising this year in 2022.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you always, as a lower level club, you always want that opportunity to test yourself against the best.
Yeah.
So as much as at that time I was like, there was a lot of non-NPL clubs involved, and it was like, oh, it would have been nice to grab one of those. But at the same time, getting the likes of Adelaide City was fantastic for us. Would have liked them at home.
Yep, that would have been a lot easier for you as well, I'd assume. But mate, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking about your football career and the struggles you've gone through as well with your diagnosis, and then obviously leaving to go to be in the Defence Force, then overseas, and then back home. And then everywhere in between. It's been great to talk about all that, mate. But before I let you go, I'm sure you've heard an episode before with Raf, who was your former head coach. You will know how it all ends with the kicking it questions. You probably had a thought about this prior to today, or
no? I've gone in cold, mate.
Gone in cold. Oh, I like this. All right. So, who would you love to kick with on the park? Anyone in the world?
Anyone in the world? Dennis Bergkamp.
Yep. Any reason behind that choice?
My Oma and Opa are Dutch, and I always watched a lot of Dutch football, and I just thought he was an incredible talent, just done things and made things look so easy, and I just think, if I could ever be a footballer, it would have been him.
And also talking about being Dutch, so does that play into the way you do your coaching as well, or not?
No, that's my step family. I haven't inherited any of the Johan Cruyff stuff out of them, but no, look, I think anyone my age sort of has an affiliation to Barcelona dominating world football there for a little while and Spain dominating. So we all have probably had a look at what they do, but not so easy to do with semi-pro footballers out in South Australia.
Yep, playing the Barcelona style, yeah. And then who would you love to kick it with on a Saturday night and have a few beers, watch some footy with? One locally, one international.
Locally, look, someone I played with a lot when I was a bit younger, but Sean Arman, Fox, the king. He seems to know everybody in South Australia, and it was always a good time. Great nights out. Fond memories. And look, internationally, I'm a bit of a Tom Cruise fan.
Okay.
Love Top Gun. I reckon Tommy would have a decent night out. He's a bit of a wild child, so wouldn't mind having a few beers with Tom.
I like how you've gone on football as well.
Yeah, look, I mean...
Hey, he might be a football fan, we don't know.
I don't think he would. But I think that bloke would have some serious stories. I wouldn't mind kicking about and be some celebs around him as well. So, I reckon it'd be a good night.
Yep, nice. Tom Cruise, that's it. There we go. The first non-footballer to kick with on the Saturday night. I like it.
No worries.
Now, thanks for joining me, mate. I really appreciate it. And good luck during your time at Salisbury United. Hopefully, in the next 3 years, we can see hopefully a promotion and maybe a semi-final this time. Appearance in the Cup, Federation Cup.
That'll be very nice. I'd really look forward to that. Hopefully that's a glimpse into the future.
Thank you for joining me, mate.
Cheers, Johnny. Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
That was the head coach of Salisbury United in the State League 2 in South Australia, Matt Gaston. Make sure you subscribe to Kicking It Local wherever you get your podcasts so you can get a taste of the SA football community. Plus, follow at Kicking It Local SA on Instagram and Twitter so you don't miss any of the action. See you soon.